This is Bill Jones with recapturefederalism.com. This is episode number 2 of the ongoing mini documentaries that we're going to have. Probably with no end, because I can do these probably the rest of my life. This is going to be episode number 2. Originally, I was going to have this as episode number 4. But I've decided to bring it in because it's so relevant to what's going on in the world today. I might even give you an answer why Barack Obama and the Democrats don't recognize the Taliban as terrorists and don't recognize ISIL as part of the Islamic religion. And mine's a little different take on it. And of course I'm going to be sourcing, as I do, I source everything. Otherwise people say you're crazy, nothing to stand on. Well, I source everything. And I'll be sourcing everything today also. Because there's going to be some charges made by me, and it's going to be based upon sources. And the title of episode here 2 is Democratic Party Member International Communist Cartel. And I have to make something very clear. I don't know whether I've ever mentioned this before, and I have mentioned it. In fact, I use the word communist as a general term, and I have used it because it's a shorter word than totalitarian and easier to spell. But that's what communism is. It's a totalitarian form of government and culture. Friedrich Engels and Karl Marx came up with the Communist Manifesto and built off of that later on in 1921 as the guidelines of the Communist Party, 1921. And really what that is built off is the Machiavelli, Niccolo Machiavelli. I'm sure you've all heard Machiavellian. Man, you hear that word and it's bad. The Prince, which was written by Machiavelli, was observations of the city-states, republics in Italy around 1500, which he was part of. He was a public administrator part of the time. He paid heavily for writing the Prince. It was never published during his lifetime. It was published 5 years after he died. But everybody reads, if you're into political science, reads the Prince. And most of those princes, they weren't happy campers. They were nasty people. In the front of his book, Machiavelli's book that I got, the copy I have, by the way, it's a 1952 copyright. That copyright's 1 year before the formation of the Communist Department of Education here in the United States, which was 1953. But Machiavelli on the front cover talks about it. You know, they hype up the books. Whenever you hype up the books and say something about it, and it's interesting what they say here. The famous analysis of statesmanship and power. This world-renowned study reveals the techniques and strategy of gaining and keeping political control. That last word, control, remember that. Get into that very deeply. It's a psychological theory, an idea, facts, I don't know. Control. Everybody wants to control. And when you're in power, you want to have total control. Totalitarian is the maximization of control and those techniques and strategies. What's Communist Manifesto, the Communist Guidelines from 1921, is Machiavellian on steroids. It's super Machiavellian, and that's what those strategies and techniques were. It's used quite a bit by, obviously, by the communists, but you don't have to be a communist to adhere and follow the Communist Manifesto. I view it as a religion. Part of it had, in 1847, the Engels came up with the Communist Confession of Faith. I view it as a religion. We'll talk about that a little bit. These strategies and techniques by Machiavelli and also the Communist Manifesto, while being used by communists, they're used by the social democratic parties and principles. And there's common travelers with the ISIL, Al-Qaeda, and those other groups. Some, the president said they're not Islam. Of course, they got the Islam in their name. You have to understand the president of the United States and the Democratic Party and the Republican Party operate on the dark side. They are part of they. There's us and there's they. They're part of the they. And there's a whole bunch of people in the world who are they. That are fellow travelers. Believe in a lot of the same things. They're different. Sure, they're different. But they believe in a lot of the same things. And they go forward, utilizing the strategies and tactics of super Machiavellian. Machiavelli on steroids. Please visit recapturefederalism.com, my website. I'd like to have you come over to the website, take a look at what we have of value that you may enjoy. I would only ask that you then subscribe. And if you choose not to subscribe, that's fine too. Please come and visit, see what we have. You will get a lot from my website that you will not get from the Main Street media, Hollywood, and almost anywhere else. Because the silence over there at those places is deafening. Deception in silence. John 8, verse 32. You shall know the truth, and the very truth will make you free. That's right, the truth, the word and the truth. And you won't get that from the press. No, it's the party press. Section 6 of the Guidelines of the Communist Party, 1921. It's the party press, the PR people for the Democrats and the Republican Democrat Party. Both of them are Democratic parties, by the way. Come and visit. See the truth. Hear the truth. Watch the truth. Just ask you to subscribe. And of course, what I always do, first of all, before I proceed any further, I always take my oath. Gotta take my oath. There's a reason for it. I, William R. Jones, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. So help me God. General quarters, all hands man your battle stations, up and forward to starboard, down and aft to port, set material condition zebra throughout the ship. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Communist insurrection. General quarters. The first thing we should do is set a base. And the base I'm going to set is from the Communist Manifesto. From page 26 of the Communist Manifesto. I've quoted this in the past. I'm just going to quote the one paragraph. There are besides eternal truths such as freedom, justice, etc., that are common to all states of society, but communism abolishes eternal truths. It abolishes all religion and all morality. Instead of constituting them on a new basis, it therefore acts in contradiction to all past experience, past historical experience. Yeah, the past historical experience, of course, of communism since 1848 is death, murder, criminal activities, because of course they get rid of morality. They get rid of the Judeo-Christian morality. They abolish Jesus Christ. That's what they're saying here. It abolishes eternal truths, the Holy Bible, all of it. Communism abolishes all religion, Judaism, Catholicism, Christianity, all the denominations of Christianity, all of it. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. It abolishes all of those things. Think about that. It abolishes all morality. Wow. Maybe that isn't really Islam over there. They call themselves Islam, the extremists do. Isn't what they do? Aren't they taking the strategies and tactics of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels? Then there's another quote that I always use from page 34. Finally, they labor everywhere for the union and agreement of the democratic parties of all countries. The communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare that their ends can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Let the ruling classes tremble at the communistic revolution. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries unite. Communists are terrorists. Let the ruling classes tremble. And you see, with ISIL and Al-Qaeda, what do? They do the same thing. They attempt to overthrow Iraq, Afghanistan. The Taliban overthrew the country of Afghanistan and put themselves in place. Covered up all the women. They didn't like what they were doing. They take them out to the soccer field, put a gun to the back of their head. Extreme control, totalitarianism, forms of communism. May not be communism, but they're following the strategies. They labor everywhere for union and agreement of the democratic parties. Remember that statement. Remember that, because that gets in to the communist cartels, okay, that I will be talking about shortly. Also, we will go to page 25. On page 25, which of course I read some of 26, but we're going to read some of 25, which leads into 26. The 10 planks of communism is on page 26, by the way. Probably won't talk about too much of them today. I get involved in that in other mini documentaries in this series to come. But on page 25, let me quote this. The communists are further reproached with desiring to abolish countries and nationality. The working men have no country. We cannot take from them what they have not got. Since the proletariat must first of all acquire political supremacy, must rise to the leading class of the nation, must constitute itself the nation. It is so far itself national, though not in the bourgeois sense of the word. Wow. Political supremacy, religious supremacy, immorality, totalitarian control, extreme control, they are terrorists, they are hate groups. And those that operate on the dark side are all fellow travelers. Call them what you want. They're all on the dark side. A lot of times I just refer to them as they, they, they. Communist. One word covers it all because that's where the strategies are coming from. It's interesting that this last paragraph that I read, I'm just a dumbass street kid from the south side of Chicago. But here in Chicago, that's what the president has his residence. I was born and raised in that neighborhood. First 12 years of my life. Born there in 1945. In the mid-50s, I was there. I've told this before in different times, different places. In the mid-1950s, I remember walking down the street there in Hyde Park. Saw some of these people. They were dressed. Hadn't seen them before. I said, I says, hey, who are they? The women had their form of a burqa. It wasn't completely like a burqa, but it was Muslim garb. The men always wore suits. Even in the middle of the summer, they'd wear suits. They'd have a bow tie. Looked spiffy. Yeah. And my mother said, well, that's their religion. They're Muslims. Okay. Didn't know what that was then. I was about 10 years old. But I was observing things then, even at 10. At 15, I'd become anti-communist. But the Muslims, the black Muslims, and I've said this before, God created Homo sapiens. Communists created blacks in 1965. Back then, they weren't called black Muslims. They were just Muslims. The Nation of Islam. I read that about abolishing countries and nationality, political supremacy. That's what black nationalists were. They were separatists. Malcolm X was with them, and they assassinated Malcolm X. But then in Chicago, south side of Chicago, there they were, and there they are. Political supremacy. They're by themselves, a nation. They call themselves a Nation of Islam. And over there, that's where Barack Obama was the community organizer. By the way, a communist term, community organizer. That's right out of the Communist Guidelines of 1921. Another community organizer lives in the same neighborhood. Jesse Jackson Sr., and of course Congressman Jr., who's now in jail, he lived in that neighborhood too. And over there, the ally of all those people, the preacher, Jeremiah Wright. Not really a Christian, do you think? He's more like a black liberation theologist. Yeah, old President Obama claims he's a devout Christian. I have my doubts. My first episode, Communist Obama, like father, like son, and his father was a communist atheist. And that's what the black liberation theology is also. So he's probably not a devout Christian. He's more like a devout communist. And we proceed. Now that we have the base, let's continue on. What other mischief do we have from the communist? Well, it's 1 second review. Communism abolishes eternal truth. It abolishes all religion and all morality. Wow. Wow. So it abolishes eternal truth. The Holy Bible, for instance, which is the word and the truth, and they abolish that. They abolish all religion, so they're abolishing Judaism and Christianity, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. I just got rid of that. They're such powerful people, such in control people, and they get rid of all morality. That's the Ten Commandments. That's the Judeo-Christian moral code. They abolish it. They just get rid of it. And what else do they have going? Well, in 1847, the basis of the Communist Manifesto, Manifesto of the Communist Parties, 1848, is a document written by Frederick Engels the year before, 1847. It is the basis for the Communist Manifesto. It is called the Draft of a Communist Confession of Faith. See, people, they look at me strange when I keep saying that communism is a religion. It's right here. They say they're a religion. They have a confession of faith. Well, Marx didn't think that was good enough. He wanted to expand off of that. It's a catechism form of confession of faith. I'm a Lutheran. We have Luther's small catechism, and it's the same, not the same ideas, of course, because that's based on Christianity and the Holy Bible. But this idea, which is asking a question and then coming up with an answer, that's a catechismal form. The Roman Catholics also have that, and I believe some other Christian denominations have some forms of that. But that's on Christianity. This is communism. It is a religion. And as I said earlier, it's religious supremacy, political supremacy. They are God. They have declared themselves as God. And what do they have on there? You will notice question 3 down there. They incorporated this in 1848 into the Communist Manifesto and expanded off of this. And it's pages 36 through 40 of the Communist Manifesto. And they ask questions back, well, are you a communist? Yes. What is the aim of communism? To organize society in such a way that every member of it can develop and use all capabilities and powers in complete freedom and without thereby infringing the basic conditions of this society. A lot of that stuff is bunk. When you go into the Communist Manifesto, and here in the Communist Confession of Faith, you'll find deception, distraction, deflection, and you'll hear that from communists all over. You'll hear it today from communists. You'll hear it from communists today who are American communists. And you have to weed out some of the garbage from the lies, some of the truths that they have in there. But just like on all controlling people, their truth is wired, their brain is wired backwards. And just the opposite of what we have in our country as far as a political system. Look down there at question 3. How do you wish to achieve this aim? Well, there we just read what the aim is. And the answer, by the elimination of private property and its replacement by community of property. There's your communes, by the way. But wait a minute. Elimination of private property? And then it becomes the part of the state? That violates every state constitution and the federal constitution. We have property rights, don't we? It's one of the biggest cornerstones of our political system is property rights. And these dudes come along and they just eliminate private property, which means also eliminating those rights. It's a usurpation, which is a favorite word of our founders. That's taking the rights of one person, stealing the rights. Well, they steal the rights and they're also stealing the property. They're seizing it by the state. And the state, of course, is the two political parties because they're in control of everything. Totalitarian control. And there it is, the totalitarian control of property. There's several other questions. It's a total of 22 questions overall in this draft of the Communist Confession of Faith. Some of it's just, if you ought to have a beer when you're drinking this sometimes because to get through it, it's garbage. But they come up with some, pick it out, and some key points that are relevant today with American communists and worldwide communism. On question 15, and I'll read, do you intend to replace the existing social order by community of property at one stroke? Answer, we have no such intention. The development of the masses cannot be ordered by decree. It is determined by the development of conditions in which the masses live and therefore proceeds gradually. Question 16. How do you think the transition from the present situation to the community of property is affected? Now you notice in the question, and you'll see it all over, it's all about communism, is a transition. The change, the hope of communism keeps moving from point to point. That's why they say that the Constitution is a flowing document, which it is not. They want it as a flowing document because that way they can make it into a democratic Constitution. Well, Bill, where'd you get that from? Well, we're going to be talking about that right now. The answer to that question 16, again, how do you think the transition from the present situation to the community of property is to be affected? And the answer they give in 1847, the first fundamental condition for the introduction of community of property is the political liberation of the proletariat through a democratic constitution. Wow, look at these words. You wonder where they got some of these words from? Right out of here. Fundamental change, fundamental condition, political liberation, black liberation theology, democratic constitution. We don't have a democratic constitution. And I'll be getting into that to real deep here in a few minutes with the Federalist Papers 51, which is the defining Federalist paper regarding our political system. Now, question 17. And here we get right down to the nitty-gritty. What will be your first measure once you have established democracy? Again, we are not a pure democracy. And how do we know that? James Madison, Federalist Paper number 10, talks about it. That's about insurrection, by the way, 9 and 10. 9's Alexander Hamilton, 10 is James Madison. Madison says in number 10, we are not, our Constitution is not a pure democracy. We are a democracy, but we're really a republic. And we're really a compound republic. I'll get into that in a little bit. But once they have established a democracy, and that's what they've done. They've done that here. You'll hear them talk about our democracy. I did a whole presentation here a couple months back. Harry Reid on the floor of the Senate talking about our democracy. Yeah, his democracy, communist democracy. What will be your first measure once you have established democracy? The answer, guaranteeing the subsistence of the proletariat. There's your aid. There's your minimum wage. But you notice that the proletariat, the lower class, they get subsistence. That's all they get. You know, they get a free Obama phone, which isn't from Obama. It's really from the taxpayers. But that's the subsistence. That's all they get. And they drive the middle class down into the lower level, and that's what the middle class will get. Because the whole communist game is a confidence game. It's an illegal, criminal confidence game. A shell game, if you will. And they move everything around. They take the stuff from the middle class, force them down into the lower class. Everybody there in between those two classes that they've been fighting in class warfare, they have subsistence. And what? Where's everything go to when they steal from the middle class? And they take for some of the rich and skim profits. Lobbyists, and get the money from lobbyists and kickbacks and bribery. Where's that all go? That's right, it goes to the Communist Party and its members and leaders, and they live high on the hog as everyone else is enslaved, and that's what it's all about. Then we have the next question. How will you do this? And the answer, 1. By limiting private property in such a way that it gradually prepares the way for its transformation into social property, e.g. by progressive taxation, limitation of the right of inheritance in favor of the state, etc., etc. 2. By employing workers in national workshops and factories and on national estates. And 3. By educating all children at the expense of the state. Those three, they would be expanded in 1848. That's three ways of doing things. They would end up coming up with the 10 planks. And they would expand the 10 planks, by the way. Most everybody thinks 10 planks is all there is. No. Later on in the Manifesto, they come up with 12 or 13. Then they had open letter to the government and to the people of Germany, and it had several demands. One of those demands, by the way, complete separation of church and state. You notice here, education of all children at the expense of the state. I will just tell you, we have the Department of Education. It's a communist department. We have CETA. That's a communist program. We have Operation Head Start. It's been going on for 40 years. That's a communist program. And we have people get all upset over Common Core. And they should. That's Johnny come lately. That's the graduate school of all these other ones. Oh, and no, we have some more now. We're going to throw in some more. We're going to throw in the community college, free community college. We get the mayor of Chicago, the former chief of staff for Obama, Rahm Emanuel. He's running again for mayor, re-election. Oh, he comes out, great program, free community college. By the way, that violates the state constitution, Republic of Illinois. That it violates the equal protection of law. You see, they're not going to give free community college to everybody. No, there's conditions on it. They're going to give it to their buds, you know, in the hood. Their communist clientele. The proletariat. Oh yeah, the middle class will get it too, but obviously they're going to have to pay a price for that because they really don't get it for nothing because they're giving up on their taxes. You notice number 2 there, by employing workers in national workshops. General Motors, by the way, the lie, there's always, watch out for the lies, the deception. There's no such thing as bailouts. They were nationalizations of General Motors, the banks, and what have you. We have nationalized banks, and they were members of the Federal Reserve. All treasonable acts, by the way. Progressive taxation, and limit of right of inheritance. I'll get into that stuff in detail later on in different mini documentaries. I talked earlier about abolishing countries and nationalities. That comes right out of question 21. Will nationalities continue to exist under communism? That's where you're getting all this illegal immigration, criminal activity, unsafe borders. That's why you don't have any borders, because they eliminated our country borders and nationality. We don't exist. America don't exist. We're all communists. We're all slaves to communism. Get into that deeply too. Same-sex marriage and the destruction of traditional marriage. It's expanded off of question 20. Will not the introduction of community property be accompanied by the proclamation of the community of women? That's all about. I get into that deeply. And then question 22, the last question. Do communists reject existing religion? Answers. All religions which have existed heretofore were expressions of historical stages of development of the individual people and groups of peoples, but communism is that stage of historical development which makes all existing religions superfluous and supersedes them. In the main body of the Constitution, the main body of the Manifesto, they change supersedes them to makes them disappear, okay, abolishes them. So that's where this idea of abolishing religions, they no longer, they're not relevant either, just like the Constitution's not relevant to them, to the communist. Of course, it may be relevant to everybody else and the citizens, but they don't care about that. They have extreme control. They are control freaks. There is totalitarian control, complete and absolute control. That's called slavery and involuntary servitude, violations of the 13th Amendment. We'll go now and not talk about the bad people, but start talking about the good people, the contrast over. Talked about democracy. We are not a pure democracy as I stated. We are, in fact, a compound republic. Where do I get that from? It's in Federalist Papers 51. When I went back to college, I was in back to university. I was a 20-year sophomore, believe it or not. Not the brightest person in the world. When I'd come back from Vietnam, I had working, raising a family, going to school. I had working for General Motors for a while, and working a lot of hours. Couldn't get the right times for some of the classes. I stopped going, and didn't go back and return to the college and university scene until into the 90s. I was a 20-year sophomore, and I returned. Got an associate degree in industrial supervision, community college. I had this interest, obviously, in politics and political stuff. I continued on and went to Governor State University, majoring in public administration. Of course, had a lot of classes in urban planning and economics and political classes, political science, and also U.S. Constitution law. Had a great professor. We talked obviously about the Federalist Papers. You don't get into it too much. You almost need a specific class in the Federalist Papers. There's 85 of them, as I've mentioned in the past. Technically 87, but 85 numbered. And that professor told our class the most important one is 51. Of course, you can get some dispute by some other people, but I happen to agree with him. I've read some of the others. I haven't read all the Federalist Papers. That's a lot of reading. But there's no question that this is a defining Federalist Paper to explain our political blueprint architecture of our political system, the federal system of America. They have it here, the structure of the government must furnish proper checks and balances between different departments. New York Packet, Friday, February 8, 1788, Hamilton or Madison. All of them are signed, of course, publicus. And so there's some dispute on whether who wrote what. The other, I have another copy from somewhere else, and apparently there's, and I'm guessing now that I see this, they're putting different papers. They weren't just published in one paper. They were spread around in different papers to get to the people and let them know what was happening. They have here Hamilton or Madison, and they have it in the New York Packet February 8th. I have another copy of this from another source of the Federalist 51s, and it's the same Federalist Papers, but it was published in the Independent Journal Wednesday, February 6th, 1788, and they have it as James Madison. So I'm assuming it's Madison. Most likely is Madison, and it was in different publications. So if you ever see different dates, different publications, well, they use more than one publication to get the information out, and probably different parts of the country too. So, or the colonies, I shouldn't say the country, but the colonies. Now, 51, I'm not going to go in real big detail. I have done presentations in the past, and in this mini documentary series, I'm sure I may do a whole, most likely would do a whole episode on Federalist 51. I'm deeply involved in Federalist 51 because, as I say, I think it's one of the most important. And let me just give you an overview. There's three pillars of our government system. The federal system of America, also known as the Republican Principles of America. There's the federal Constitution, ratified in 1788. There are constitutions in every state. That makes us a compound republic. And how do I know? Because it states that in Federalist 51. We are a compound republic. And all under the umbrella of a confederacy. Not surprising. For about 10 years before we had a constitution, we had Articles of Confederation. We remained a confederation. We are still a confederation now. And with compound republics, if you will, compound republican system. That in general is the overview of that, and you can get into really big detail. The idea, of course, of compound republic is if they're zipping you, like they are with the oppressive government from the federal level, you have your states to back up. Well, what they've done, what the communists have done, and the two political parties, who I believe they are adhering to the Communist Manifesto, they have in effect destroyed the states, and they went after the states first. And here, what did they do? The 10th Amendment. Sure, that's what they did. That's where how the states are supposed to be protected. And by the way, you'll hear Jesse Jackson. I hear him because he's up in our area here. I've heard him before talking about states' rights. By the way, it is not really states' rights. What they mean by that states' rights, and what they should be meeting. And of course, Jackson doesn't believe in that or mean in that. But I'm going to tell you what it is: states' rights. No, it's we the people of those states. The Illinois Constitution, which is the fourth one we have presently right now, I ratified it when I came back from Vietnam. Within a year of me coming back from Vietnam, we had the ratification for the fourth Constitution for the state of Illinois. And it starts out, we the people of the state of Illinois. So the state rights aren't, the state is the people, just like with the federal government, we the people. So they're not really states' rights, they're the people of those state republics, because they're a republican form of government. They're the one with the rights. Now, how do they destroy, and I say they, I use that term all the time, they, I mean the people of darkness, destroying our political system, taking our rights away, usurpation of our rights and property and everything. What are their strategies? Where do they get them from? What's the basis of all that stuff? And how do they do it? Well, this is how they do it. They took the communists did. They took the Communist Manifesto and the Communist Confession of Faith, and they proceeded and they worked on their stuff from 1848. Many, many years, decades, all around the world doing their thing. And they continually went and improved their dirty deeds, and they perfected them. So I laugh, people talk about the Chicago way. The Chicago way is nothing but corruption, been here since the original sin, the darkness. People who are doing the princes of darkness, been here a long time. The Chicago way is they perfected it, and that's the same way, and they use a lot of the same techniques as the communists do. And where do they get it from? They perfected it down to the point where that in the Third Congress of the Comintern of 1921, known as the Guidelines on the Organizational Structure of the Communist Parties on the Methods and Content of Their Work, adopted at the 24th session of the Third Congress of the Communist International, 12 July 1921. Oh, that's a bunch of words. But there's 8 sections. The first one there is the general sections. I'm not going to go into too deep. I will read this first paragraph because it's very important. You'll see words like vanguard, revolutionary class struggle, and troops, frontline troops, and I want you to know about that because I get into that in this whole thing. That's line item 1, paragraph 1. There's line items, there's 59 of them. They usually have 2, 3, 4, sometimes more paragraphs in each of the line items, and there's 8 sections. This is the first section, general. The organization of the party must be adapted to the conditions and purpose of its activity. The Communist Party should be the vanguard, the frontline troops of the proletariat, leading in all phases of its revolutionary class struggle and the subsequent transitional period toward the realization of socialism, the first stage of communist society. You see, they work on it. They start, this is their flowing document, and they use their flowing documentation to destroy all other systems of government to where the point that they are, the communist parties are in the totalitarian control of everything and all property. There's transitional periods. Socialism, moving into communist society. Vanguard, frontline troops. Yeah, you do. You see that the class struggle, class warfare, and that's what we are. We're class warfare now, and the enslavement of the people of the United States. And that's where we're getting to this cartel, and I'll get there shortly. You're wondering how long it's going to take me to get here, but I'm working on it because it's all involved. They've been doing this stuff since 1848. They got a lot of things going. Let me continue on, and I'll just do a general summary as I go along. There's section 2 on the democratic centralism. Look at that. Realize that. What does that mean? Well, you can just imagine democratic centralism. That's what is happening now. That's how they do things. They move everything to democratic centralism, central control, central totalitarian control. Section 3 on the communist obligation to do work. A lot of this stuff, the cells and community work and community organization and community organizers. That's where this comes from. Propaganda, that's what they do. Propaganda and agitation. Every time, all you have to hear is somebody, especially the Democratic ones, politicians, they open their mouth and that's where it's coming from. Propaganda and agitation. Propaganda and agitation. Blah, 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 blah. They're zipping you. That's your confidence game. Your shell game. It all comes from this propaganda and agitation. Then you go in, that's 4. You go into 5 on the organization of political struggles. Class warfare, that's what you got. Organization of political struggles. We have to have people conflicting with each other, in conflict with each other, fighting each other. The two lower groups, the lower class and the middle class, fighting with each other for the benefit of the big old top class, the top dogs, the Communist Party, the leadership. They reap it all in, and their associates and friends. Number 6. Oh, one of my favorite. That's right. You wonder why the news outlets and the media and Hollywood are biased? This is where it comes from. It's all planned. It's been planned. Of course, in 1921, party press was just party press, and that's all they had was a print. Of course, then we had, radio come in, and television, moving pictures, still pictures. Of course, still pictures were there. They had the still pictures in the press back then. And then they have the movies. Then they got the internet. That's right. On the party press. By the way, the internet, Wikipedia, and I'll do that in a subsequent documentary episode. Wikipedia is pro-communist censorship, and I have proof on that, and I'm going to go through that in depth. But we have a lot of pro-communist censorship going on in that. When they talk net neutrality, that's what they're talking. That's their aim. They're not going to tell you that that's their aim, but their aim is for pro-communist censorship on the internet, taxing it. Got to tax everything, 100% tax. I've been through that. And when I did the previous episode number 1, Obama, communist, I think it was communist Obama, like father, like son. I went through that. 100% tax, that's what you're getting. Internet neutrality, come on, give me a break. Hang on to your wallet. Number 7, the general structure of the party organism. I have to watch when I say this because I'm so tempted to say party orgasm. And because we as a country and the citizens are being politically sodomized, but it doesn't say that. It's on the party structure of the party organism. And what they do is they're explaining the party and how to, the leadership and blah, 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 and how to do it. Start out in the urban areas, work to the rural, which they've done, and that's all part of that. Then we go to Section 8. Now here, they are admitting, the communists, that they're crooks and criminals. Section 8 is on the combination of legal and illegal work. Okay. That's criminal activity, isn't it? Yeah. Violation of loyalty. Don't believe in loyalty oaths. Should not have loyalty oaths. You know why you don't have loyalty oaths to a country? because they abolished the country and nationality. Yeah, they're not dummies. But then there's and this goes right in and transitions into the whole the core of the title of this episode. We got all this stuff I've been talking about, and I haven't gone into detail on most of it, till we get to this section 8. Now we're going to start talking about this cartel, this secret cartel, which isn't all that secret if you know where to look for it, because it is worldwide, international, okay, world communism. That's where we're going to go. You know, here we're going to talk right about this cartel business that exists, and I found it somewhat by accident. You know, it's like a lot of things. It's buried in the internet. Haven't heard anybody talk about it. You won't hear the media. We just talked about party press, media, Hollywood, Section 6 of the guidelines of the Communist Party. They own them, man. They own them. They control them. And then you have the Progressive Alliance Political International. Wow, it sounds pretty benign, doesn't it? Progressive. Old Glenn Beck talks about progressives all the time. Progressive, and some other people do too. I wish they'd just get some balls, grow a set, and tell it like it is. Progressive is communism. And in our country, progressives, what does that mean? It means progressing from the American political system to a totalitarian control system. Why are you being nice about that? It's oppression. It's enslavement. Why be nice? Well, you be nice on it because it all has to do with communist racketeering. I did a presentation not too long ago about communism and racketeering and profiteering. And that's what the press and Hollywood do. That's what they're doing. That's why they give money to lobby. And they're making a big deal of it. They're making money. They're part of that leadership part. And they're paying their way to get into that leadership part, along with the press. If you're pressed with that side of them, you know, you work with them. There's a lot of money being made being on the dark side for communism. A lot of money. I know Glenn Beck, he's a product of CNN and Fox News. And I thought when he went on his own going to start up a deal, oh wow, man, this guy's got some testosterone. Wow, he's going to be, whoa. BS. It's sad. It is sad. He, like the rest of the party press and Hollywood and the media, are operating on the dark side. And that's what you got to figure out, and figure out who's what and where and how and which side. Either the side of the Prince of Peace and the Prince of Light, or the side of the Prince of Darkness. You got to decide, and you got to figure out how to do that. And I'm going to tell you how to do it in some of my documentaries. But right here, I'm going to show you some of the princes of darkness. It's not just in the United States. And this is the Progressive Alliance Political International. So that's a communist international. And you'll see it come down, and it explains about it's a formal organization. And there's members here, you know, they got Argentina, and these are the board members, okay? And I'm just going to quickly go down because I'm going to get into this more. There's 29 names here. There's 29 names, 30 total, but with 29 countries with democratic, social democratic, liberation, popular forces, blah, 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 blah. And look down here, the United States is there. The Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is a member of a foreign organization, foreign influence, a communist international organization. Oh, I mean, this isn't the United Nations, which that's bad enough too. These are countries within, and this is how they control the United Nations too. I view the United Nations and the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank, I view them as communist organizations. Some say they're socialist, and I read you that piece. That's just the first step to communism. I view everything as communist, Marxist, whatever name you want to slap on it. They follow those guidelines. But I'm going to, 1 second here before I proceed. Now, you wonder, well, Bill, where did you find this? How did you find it? Like I said, I think I found it by accident. But I look for this stuff, and I spot this stuff. I think in previous presentations, I can spot a communist. All I have to hear about 1 or 2 sentences, I can figure out which side they're on, whether they're on the side of us, the free citizens class, or on the communist criminal class. And I can figure it out, you know. This is all the communist criminal class. And well, you say, well, I don't see communist written there anywhere in these places. Doing a little further research, by the way, you can read about it yourself. Just Google Progressive Alliance, and you'll get this page. And I'll go further on this, and because this is just the board of directors. But the Social Democrats, where there's what does that mean in relationship to communism? Well, there's an article written, and I got that online also, Jacobin magazine.com, and JACOBINMAG.com, an article on their online magazine in January of this year. This alliance was formed together in 2011, 12, and formally in 2013. It's only a couple years old. But there's an article which is entitled "Understanding Greek Communist." Well, you know, they have had communists since World War II over in Greece, on and off, and then there's, you know, have these labor disputes in the last couple of years, and suddenly we now have this organization, which is an international organization, political international, that the Democratic Party belongs to. It's a cartel, is what it is. How legal is that? Somebody who's making getting involved in treaties, I'm going to get involved a little more when we start talking about participants. But I want to read one paragraph. Understanding the Greek communist. And then there's a paragraph, and I start. Unlike other European countries where communist parties were transformed into full-fledged social democratic parties in the 1990s, in Greece this move was resisted. Greece was different because the movement itself provided a milieu of new radicalization, forcing the left parties to compete in order to relate with. The role of organized presence of the anti-capitalist left in the struggles of that decade is also indispensable to understanding this process. You see, the communists changed their name. We all know how dark and evil communism is. Ronald Reagan told us, it was an evil empire. And they go, and with the lies and the deception, well, that the wall came down. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down the wall. Well, the wall was torn down, not by Gorbachev, but by the people. They tore the wall down. Well, that must mean communism disappeared. No, it hasn't disappeared. But they use it for that, and then they change the names to Social Democrats. Not all of them did. I'll get into that. But if up here in Greece, was the Pan-Hellenic socialist movement. By the way, that they may be disappearing. I'm sure there's other socialist democratic parties, and I'll get into that in a little bit. They got defeated in an election pretty bad, so they may be transitioning over to this socialist or social democratic party and what have you. I will now continue and we'll start talking about the participants, which really gets very, very interesting. You go to the Progressive Alliance home site, their home, and you have up on top their campaign structures, basic, and participants, which we're going to go to in a second, of who they are. And you see all the work that they're doing, the wonderful, wonderful communist work. And, you know, well, who are these people? Where are they from? There are over 100 participants in this organization, and we're going to go through them here in a second. As I say, participants, there's 100 of them, and obviously some of the board of directors are part of it. Some of these countries have more than one political party. They maybe have a couple, 3, 4, 5 parties. They're on the left, Social Democrats with different names. We have one down Central African Republic. I don't know what it was before. It must, had to be something else. I didn't know there was a Central African Republic, but I guess there is. I guess I'm gonna have to do my geography. And their movement for the liberation of for Central African people. Wow. I mean, that's communist. That's pure communist. But you look at these other ones, and Argentina, they have had progressivism and communism in Argentina since 1890, for instance. Long time. Some of them are relatively new, some are old. Going back, I mean, when we get to Germany, we're going back all the way back to, in that part of Europe, we're going all the way back to 1848, 1847, and even before that, this movement, the communist movement. But you have Belarus and Austria and Belgium and Bolivia, and you'll see some of the movements. Anytime you hear movements, beware. Movements for socialism, that's communism, okay? And it's all part of this cartel. And there's 100 participants plus. Right at 100 right now, but I'm sure they're going to add. Even Canada. Social Democratic Front from Cameroon. Now, you think, come on. And we go down, and we got Dominican Republic, and we got Egypt. Look at that, Egypt. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that where the Egyptian Brotherhood's at? Yeah. Egyptian Social Democratic Party. That's communism. Now we're involved. There's a problem over there. They got rid of their guy there. And then they had another guy and they got rid of him and blah, blah, blah. But here during that period of time, the Democratic Party is participating with these different groups in this cartel. And we're dealing with them on a political basis with treaties and what have you. The Secretary of State, a former senator, is a member of the Democratic Party. Isn't that a conflict of interest? Don't we have a conflict of interest with the Democratic Party that they're in power in our country and they're dealing with these other communist people? Now you get down to El Salvador down there. Look at El Salvador. The Marti National Liberation Front. Now, you remember them little kiddies coming up here, crossing the border? Oh, no, that couldn't have been all organized by communism. Now, could it? Oh, yeah. Remember, they abolished countries and nationality. Yeah, that was no accident. It's part of the world communism. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We go down to Greece that I mentioned. Then you'll see, look, Great Britain, the Labour Party, a lot of Labour parties. Well, you know, Hitler, he came into power, started out, he was the head of the German Workers' Party. That's socialism and all that kind of stuff over there. Of course, they were fighting with the communists. And you said, well, they're not part of the thing. No, there's competition between those groups. Hitler wanted to be king dog and knock out Stalin. Control it all. Control freak. But, you know, you see Great Britain, the Labour Party. There's Germany, Social Democratic Party of Germany. I'll get into them in a little bit. They're an interesting name. They go all the way back. They're tied to Karl Marx. Somewhat indirectly, but it goes all the way back to that. It's the Workers' Party. And we got the Hungarian Socialists and Social Democrats. Of course, they were, you know, you have the Eastern European Iron Curtain countries. Look at that. Indonesia. Yeah, that's where little Barack grew up at, was Indonesia, wasn't it? Huh? Yeah, they had communists over there, too. They were the big fights in the 60s. In fact, when I was in the Navy, we were supposed to go over to, I forget exactly, whether either Malaysia or Indonesia on a liberty call, show the flag, and we couldn't go. They were having their communist insurgency and fighting there, and we went to Hong Kong instead, which I was happy about because I really didn't. But look at this. Look at that. Iran, Democratic Party of Iranian Kurdistan. Kamala Party of Iranian Kurdistan. Iran, Kamala Party of Kurdistan. Wow. They're involved with Iran. I guess maybe they really, they're just doing all this talk about stopping nuclear weapons, aren't they? Sure they are. They're involved. The same thing happened, by the way, with North Korea. I laugh about this because, and it's not funny, really. It's just laughing at the dark side. You know, North Korea didn't always have nuclear weapons, and they're allies with Iran, aren't they? They didn't always have nuclear weapons. That's relatively recently, since, you know, 21st century, just right after that, they got everything developed and they're working on it real big time. Yeah, we were going to stop them too. Yeah, sure. They're not going to stop Iran. They're involved with Iran. They're part of the cartel. It's part of the overall complete control. Yeah, it's overall complete control. Then we come down to Israel. Now here we got Israel with the Labour Party and the Meretz Party. I've heard of the Labour, I didn't hear of the other one. There's so many of them, you know. Little commie cockroaches are all over the place. Israel, the Labour Party, and what have you. You notice that it's not the Likud Party, which Benjamin Netanyahu, I can't say his name, you know who I'm talking about. They're fighting. Obama's fighting with him. This is why he's fighting with him. The Democratic Party is in with the other parties. And he'll tell you, Netanyahu, he doesn't want to get involved in it because he's in an election and he doesn't want to take sides. Democratic Party has already taking sides through their cartel. Do you understand what that means? Think about that. And when do we go down here and we get to P? We get to P, Palestine. Well, I see Pakistan too there. There's two of them. Whose side is they on? Whose sides are they? All these on? What side are they? Which side? Palestine, the Fatah Party, and the Palestinian National Initiative. You want to know what kind of policy you got, a foreign policy? I've said this before and I'll say it again. You've got a Jesse Jackson, Reverend what's-his-face, and Farrakhan. That's the party. That's where the community organizer worked with all those people. They're all from the same neighborhood or the same general area, south side of Chicago. Yeah. Show you how easy this is. In 2008, Jeremiah Wright, the preacher, Sean Hannity brings him up. And this is what happens with Fox. Fox, you think they're doing good. They're bringing the stuff up. But they just do it half-ass. Brings up Jeremiah Wright. Does some talking about it, but doesn't do the complete job of Jeremiah Wright. Back in 2008, and what I do is I go on the internet. Everybody's got websites now. You know Jeremiah Wright and that church, Trinity Church of Christ on the south side. They had a website, and I went to it. It's not that hard. I don't know where these people, what kind of research people they have at these news places, but it's not that hard. Sean Hannity couldn't go to the website. He'd find out a lot more than what he said. So they're only giving you partial information. Beware of what they don't say. They'll say stuff. And the same with Megyn Kelly when she interviewed Ward Chamberlain and Bill Ayers. I've known of Bill Ayers going back to the 60s, okay? He's from Chicago. He was at the University of Illinois, Chicago, as an English teacher. Believed he wrote the book and put Obama's name on it about Obama's father, Dreams from My Father. As I say, previous episode, his father was a communist atheist. Okay? Megyn Kelly did the interview. Good interview for what there was of it. And what she said and the questions she asked. But she didn't ask the real tough questions, the big questions that I would have asked. Let him get away with garbage, Bill Ayers, and let Chamberlain get away with stuff. Instead of asking about communism, they don't bring up like it doesn't exist. And that's the same with the treason article in the Constitution. No one ever looks at that or talks about it. And I heard Judge Janine, well, can't get enough proof. You want to make a bet? I will gladly be an expert witness. Somebody wants to bring up charges against a public official for treason. That they're communist and adhering to the Communist Party. You see what I'm talking about right here, aren't you? This is treasonable stuff. The Democratic Party of the United States is adhering to the Communist Manifesto and is associated and is advocating the overthrow of the United States government by dealing with this. Okay. I want to see, there's one, let's see, Mauritania is up here somewhere. Well, it's Mauritania, and Mauritania is the Assembly of the Democratic Forces associated with there's a country, Emeritus, and I never knew there was a separate, whether that's a part of the country or what. I've never realized that. I'm going to have to get my old, you have to go online. You can't even look at the old globes anymore because they're out of date. But militant movement. These are terrorists. Communists are terrorists. They're involved with terrorists. The gangs, the street gangs in the United States are terrorist organizations. Those are the troops for the Communist Party. That's right. I can make that argument, and I will continue to make it. But even at places, South Korea, they have a Democratic United Party and blah, 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 blah. And there we have it. Down there, a participant. USA, Democratic Party. Oh, Yemen's there. Yemeni Socialist Party. Were they the ones that got just overrun out of there by the terrorist? Terrorist against terrorist, I guess. Zimbabwe. Movement for a democratic change. And we got some that are just general organizations, worldwide organizations, International Union of Socialist Youth. Are you kidding me? Socialist International Women. Group of Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament. Insiders. Party of European Socialist. Party of European Socialist Women. Now we got to have special ones for women. Community of women, yeah. Young European Socialist. Socialist Group in Pace. Network of Socialist Democracy in Asia. Arab Social Democratic Forum. Wonder if there's any terrorists in there. Who they are, what they are, and all the money. Is any money coming from the United States into these different groups and parties? Foreign aid, you wonder. How about money directly from the Democratic Party given to them by lobbyists to get tax breaks then? How about that? Central African Progressive Alliance. Joint Committee of the Nordic Social Democratic Labor. Lost my site there. I clicked it. Yeah. Young European Socialist. Socialist Group of Pace. Trade Union Congress. Tunisian General Labor Union. You remember I read about it. Going way back. Let me see if I can find it here again. On page 34, finally, they labor everywhere, and that's the British spelling, by the way, L-A-B-O-U-R. They labor everywhere for the union and agreement of democratic parties of all countries. That's going back to 1848. That's from the Communist Manifesto, page 34. Wow. This is pretty sad, isn't it? Why don't you ever hear about this, though? Why not? And better yet, why don't you spread the word? A little self-ad right here. How about coming to my website, recapturefederalism.com, subscribe, send out some information. We're going to keep a lot of this stuff presently for free. I will be having a members page, make my site a member site in the near future. I'm going to be taking some of these, editing some of these down, making more formal documentary probably somewhere in the future. We're going to continue, and these documentaries, probably these mini ones, these raw ones, they're going to be on the member sites. I still am going to have free stuff if you want to come over, take a look, give you some. You're not going to get any of this stuff anywhere else, okay? You're not hearing this on the news, are you, about this cartel? Don't you think as an American citizen, taxpayer, you ought to be aware of this? And have a good day until we get to the next presentation. next mini documentary.